everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make a Parisian classic for dinner. We're going to do it in slightly a different way. Now, when I was in Paris in the late 90s, I went there with my girlfriends, and we stayed with a friend of ours who was actually Italian, who was living in Paris, and he let us have his apartment. So during the day, we would do all the touristy things, and in the evening, he would take us to places that we would never have found ourselves, places that were off the beaten track. And I was a vegetarian at the time, so every time we went out to eat, I would either get a vegetable dish or I would get a fish dish. But on our very last night in Paris, he took us to this little restaurant that was run by a husband and wife. We would never have found it in a million years, and it was so good, and I decided I'm getting a French classic. Even though I'm vegetarian, I'm getting Beef Bourguignon. So that's what I did. And I remember it more clearly than any other meal that I had the entire time I was in Paris. And the thing that I remember most about it was in the sauce, the woman had put cinnamon. And I thought that was so interesting to have cinnamon in this beef dish. So I'm gonna try to recreate Beef Bourguignon, but I'm not gonna do it with beef. I'm gonna do it with portobello mushrooms. We have some root vegetables. So my mother always also made an Irish stew with big chunky vegetables. So I'm gonna sort of be inspired by the chunky vegetables of my mother's dish, and then the broth and the cinnamon and the spices that the woman in Paris used. So here we go, I hope we enjoy it. Here are the ingredients. We have some Burgundy wine. We have some tomato paste. We have some bundle of herbs here. We have some pearl onions, some chopped shallot, some chopped mushrooms. We're going to start off with some turnip, a carrot, a parsnip. We have 2 celery stalks cut up. And in place of the beef, we're going to use portobello mushrooms. So we have big slices of portobello mushrooms here. And here we go. Step 1, pour yourself a glass of wine. We've preheated the oven to 350 degrees because we're going to start on the stovetop and then we're going to move to the oven. So here in an oven-proof pan, we have 2 tablespoons of butter. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil, approximately. So we've melted the butter and warmed up the oil a little bit, and first thing going in is the celery, carrots, turnip, and parsnip because they're the hardest of the vegetables, and we want to coat these and soften them up a little bit before we move on. So we're adding a little salt as well, about a teaspoon, and we're going to stir them up. Get them glossy. Now that these vegetables have softened up a bit, we're adding 1 chopped shallot, a large shallot, and the sliced cremini mushrooms. We're holding the portobello mushrooms to the very end. So we're adding these to the dish because they don't cook as long. We're going to stir it up. Check back in a couple of minutes. Adding some black pepper. Before we add the liquids, we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and I also have this blend from Penzeys, which is called French 4-spice, and it has white pepper, nutmeg, ginger, and cloves. And I think with the cinnamon and a little bit of this I think is going to go a long way. But we're putting that on now, and I think it's going to add that nice French Parisian flavor that I remember so well. So we decided to add a 1/2 teaspoon of the French blend. But we're going to limit the cinnamon to a 1/4 teaspoon because I think cinnamon could really take over, and we can always taste it later and see if we want to add a little bit more. I wish you could smell my kitchen right now. Wow, that's heady. And now we're adding a 1.5 cups of Burgundy. And before we add any other liquids, we're going to let the alcohol burn off for a little bit. And now we're adding 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour just to thicken up the sauce a little bit. We're adding some tomato paste. stirring that in. All the classic beef bourguignon recipes call for tomato paste, and my mother used to put it in her stew as well. We're adding 2 cloves of rough chopped garlic. And I've put together this little bouquet garni here. It has parsley, some fresh thyme, a couple of bay leaves, and a piece of leek. And I'm just pushing that in. We're adding 2 cups of vegetable stock. Deglazing the bottom of the pan a little bit. We put a lid on the main pan, and in another pot here in the frying pan we have a little bit of olive oil and our portobello mushrooms, and we're putting in our pearl onions. And we're going to just caramelize them a little bit before we add them to the dish. Okay, we're putting the pan in the oven. We're holding the mushrooms and the onions until about the last 15 minutes, and then we'll add them to the main dish. We're going to let this go for about a half hour, and we're going to check on it. It's been 30 minutes, and we're going to take the lid off and see what's going on. Oh my. Oh me, oh my. That looks gorgeous. And we're going to remove the bouquet garni. And we've added a few more mushrooms and a few more onions to this saute pan. And we're going to add them now to the main dish. So who needs beef when you have portobello mushrooms? Oh, yum. Okay, we're going to put the lid back on, put it back in the oven. We're going to check it in 15 minutes to see if it needs more liquid. But right now it looks pretty good. In the meantime, we're boiling some potatoes because we're going to serve this on mashed potatoes. It's been 15 minutes. We're checking to see if it needs more liquid. Ooh, the steam. Also just taking a knife and piercing some of these vegetables and making sure they're soft. So, they feel pretty soft to me. Not looking good. Okay, we're just giving this a good stir, and then we're going to put it back in the oven again without the lid so that it thickens up and becomes very stew-like. Here it is out of the oven. You can see how the sauce has reduced. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? It smells wonderful. It's time to serve it up. Adding a sprinkling of parsley. And here is dinner. Ooh la la, that was so good. I wish you could smell my house right now. It is so fragrant with all those warming spices. The dish came out very Parisian, and it did not need meat at all. So if you're a vegetarian, I really hope that you try this dish. So please share this video with your friends, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Cheers.